Hello everyone, welcome to the Glopo class. In today's class, we are going to cover three mini concepts. We are going to begin with the concept of development. So this would be the first chapter of development unit where we would be unpacking the concept of development. Number two, today we are going to cover the difference between basic needs and well-being. And the third would be where we would be covering the difference between economic growth and economic development. So let's get started with some of the warm up of brain, and the activity is, so I'm going to show you some of the countries, and you have to put them in hierarchy of development from most developed to least developed countries. All right, sit with a pen and paper. You may pause it in between and you can write it down, right? So these are the countries. You have very limited time. Just put them in the order from the most developed to the least developed. All right, I move ahead. You can pause it. So, what was there? How could you do it very easily? Could you fix those countries from the most to the least developed countries? What were the criteria you used while putting those countries from top to bottom? How did you interpret the term development? Okay, so it might be that a few of you were looking development from economic growth point of view, wherever you felt that as per GDP, GNP, per capita income, the country is ranked highest to higher level. It could be one of the indicators. A few of you were probably looking from interdependence point of view or from globalization point of view. Some could be from demographic point of view, okay, aging population or young country, life expectancy, all right. Then mobility, okay. Another indicator could be probably mobility in terms of urbanization, in terms of mobilization, in terms of globalization, personal wealth, social quality of life, social justice, equal opportunities, satisfaction, cultural point of view, whether the cultural is intact in that country or not, whether the equal rights to indigenous population giving or not, whether that geographical indicator GI are pretty high in that country or not. All right, education, identity, freedom of speech, democracy, environment, sustainability, conservation, right? So there were the different factors probably you were looking at when you were scaling those countries. So what was that? There were the different meanings of the development, right? You all were interpreting when you were racing to keep the countries from top to bottom. You were thinking different dimensions. Those were the multidimensional approach of development. Apart this one, I give you the second brain exercise. You have to quickly think about the two countries against each concept mentioned here. For development, what could be the two countries? If you are asking me, I may think of um, Korea or Singapore. In case if globalization you are giving to me, I may think of Vietnam, I may think of Brazil. Inequality, I may think of India, Russia. Sustainability, I may think of Costa Rica. I may think of Norway or Denmark also. Okay, so like this, you have to just think about the two countries against each concept. Why am I doing this one? Because here I want to introduce the four key concepts to you and different countries and the contested meaning of these concepts, which I would be taking further. But today on our plate, it's development. The third activity, the third exercise for you is you have to think of the pictures contested pictures, which is representing on the one hand the development and on the other hand the different connotation of development. Okay, for one it may not be development. For example, from my side, it's dam and flood. Okay, so for some, dam can be considered as one of the indicators of development. It may bring drought also. It may bring flood also, right? It may affect lots of people, internally displaced people, right? So this is the contested pick connected to development. You may bring your own picture. You may think of those pictures. A few more example. One could be Antilla versus Dharavi in Mumbai, India. Okay, both they are in India. One on the one hand, you can put the picture of Antilla, which is owned by Dhirubhai Ambani, Mukesh Ambani, and Dharavi, which is known as the biggest slum of Asia. Okay, on the other hand, you can paste that pic. The third example could be of Brazil deforestation. On the one hand, you can post the pic of deforestation in Brazil. On the other hand, the development, urbanization, industrialization which is taking place over there, you can paste that pic on the other hand. You may think of many more pictures which are debatable or which are giving the um, two sides of the same coin, right? So think over that. So what are the inferences out of all these things? What we are discussing, the different meanings of development, right? There was not a single meaning of development. We all are thinking differently about development. So what is this development in case if we talk about? Okay, one thing which I would like to suggest you to watch this documentary. This is quite interesting, drowned out. This is given in one of the textbooks also. This is mentioned there. This is available on YouTube. You can watch this movie. This is on Dam, the picture which I'm showing to you. So you would see the different connotation of development in this documentary. The meaning of development, as per the IB Glopo guidebook, it's the sustained increase in the standard of living. All right. So that means development is taking place, but that's the sustainable, right? And the standard of living, it's also pretty high. Now, there are the different things which are connected to development. One may say that for me, development could be just connected to meeting the basic needs. Another person may say that for me it's not only about the basic needs but going beyond this one, and I'm thinking about the well-being thing as well. So before delving into basic needs or the well-being, so let's have a look at the definition of development. All right, so these are some of the key terms what you can use. What are the different meanings of development? It could be healthcare and public health, well functioning institutions, decreased inequality, reduced poverty, unemployment, more sustainable production and consumption pattern. The focus of development debates in contemporary global politics is on issues faced by developing countries, right? So this is again the debatable point where developed countries versus developing countries have been debating on the meaning of development. For one, it might look like growth. For the other, it may look like development. For one, it may look like just meeting the basic needs. For other, it may look like achieving the well-being, right? We would be discussing further about the meaning of these terminologies, but this is the definition what we understand of development, which is the contestable meaning, right? Because it has multi-layer perspective, it is multi-dimensional to understand the meaning of the development. But usually we say development means sustained increase in the standard of living, which is moving more towards well-being than ill-being, right? Well-being means where we are including many different factors. The factors could be on the basis of health, education, employment, right? Standard of living. These could be the different factors. Uh, you can think of those 11 factors which are under OECD, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. I would be discussing that under measurement of development, right? So remember those 11 indicators. You can think of those 11 indicators. There are some points in global politics where I always ask that please remember these things. Okay, make some sticky notes, paste it on your wall. For example, peace index, right? What are the peace indicators? So when you are tackling the unit of peace and conflict, that time you can remember those 8 indicators and you can use them frequently. Your 16 key concepts, which I spoke in my previous video, you can use that as well. Now here I'm giving you these 11 indicators which are under OECD. I'll be taking later on, so that you can remember and you can use them, that what are those well-being indicators, and why we are talking about that a country which is moving from ill-being to well-being is considered as the definition of the development. A few of the common terms which are connected to this one is sustained increase in the living standard, right? And the second could be level of social organization, which is also increased over here. So it's not talking only about the state actors, but even the non-state actors as well. Clear? So this is about the development. Okay, another thing which is connected to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Generally, we do not take Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but some of the people, they consider even the definition or meeting or achieving this pyramid as the success to get full development, right? So if you see this Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so biological needs, they are at the bottom, and the psychological needs, they are at the top. So moving from the biological needs or the basic needs to the psychological needs or to the self-fulfillment needs, which is connected to self-actualization, people consider this one as the um, true picture of development, that how a country can progress, right? How a country can achieve its basic needs, right? It can start from the biological need. It could be food, shelter, water, medication, clothing, housing which is connected to shelter only. So it could be connected to this one, and then gradually moving to the psychological needs, and finally achieving the self-actualization needs. Um, when you are opening the presentation, in case if it is in the pptx, try to convert it into Google Slides so that you can have access to the speaker's notes as well. Development can thus be defined as the struggle to fulfill human needs from basic. This is what I have spoken already. The goal is self-actualization or the fulfillment of a person's potential and wishes in life. The pyramid structure shows that if the bottom level is not secure, it will be difficult to achieve the upper levels. So that's why it has put down in such a way where you need to meet first the basic needs or the biological needs, and then gradually you move further. So this is what the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. All right, let's move further, and you have to think about development from your own angle. What do you consider development for yourself? What do you demand under the term development? You can pause it, you can write, you can think. It could be food for survival or nutritious food. It could be clothing to survive or branded clothes, home for shelter or luxurious house. Okay. Before, I mean, I'm definitely, if I'm in my class, I would be listening to all the answers and then only I would be talking about. But majorly, I get the responses out of all these things which I have jotted down here. It could be physical health versus mental health. It could be basic education or IB at UWC. Okay. Jokes apart, so these could be the things which are leading towards the basic needs versus well-being, right? What we are talking about. So there's a short video which I would like to show you. I don't know whether uh, you would be able to hear the sound. So let me not show this one to you because this is of just 2 minutes only. So I'll be sharing the screen with you, the presentation with you. You can watch it on your own. In this video, it is shown that there are countries which are just focusing on the basic needs, right? But this is not the true definition of development or true measurement of development. There are the different factors which one needs to consider. What are those different factors? So it is talking about this. This is a wonderful video, very short, Please have a look at this video. I move further on the basic needs or well-being. So let's get started with the basic needs versus well-being. Here are the written notes. So number one thing, that measurement of absolute poverty in developing countries, this is where the basic needs link to. What is absolute poverty? Okay, just think what is absolute poverty or relative poverty. When do you call that this is the position of a relative poverty, or when do you call it as the absolute poverty? So absolute poverty whenever there is a lack of basic needs. It could be food, water, clothing, shelter. Nowadays it is included sanitation, education and healthcare. But remember that different agencies using different list for this one. All right, so these are the basic needs. Now, this approach, basic needs approach, it was introduced by the International Labor Organization's World Employment Conference in 1976. Why? Because all the countries they appealed that these should be the primary factors. Okay, countries should include these basic needs, right? So this was introduced in 1976. Then the third point, that this is focusing more on consumption, right? The basic needs approach has been described as consumption oriented, giving the impression that poverty elimination is all too easy, right? You also believe in that countries claim that poverty can be eliminated because this believes in the consumption oriented, okay? Though Amartya Sen focused on capability rather than the consumption approach. I'll be covering Amartya Sen after this presentation. Now, the basic indicator of this one is HDI, Human Development Index. The shortcoming of this approach, that it is using averages, medians or aggregate which say little about individual experiences. As I said over here, that consumption oriented focused, right? So basically it is just calculating the average or the medians or the aggregate. It is not focusing on the individual person. Okay, so this is the lacuna of this approach. You understood what is the basic needs approach. So then we have well-being which is propounded by Amartya Sen. It talks more about the capability approach, about the individual approach, then talking about the average, median and aggregate. The indicators of this approach is Happy Planet Index, OECD Wellbeing Indices. The shortcoming of this approach is that it is well-being indicators are subjective based on what people say rather than empirically observed data. Okay, so this is not empirically observed. This is more focused on subjectivity. Composite indicators such as HDI are quite sophisticated. When you are using HDI, you can actually compare between the countries over time also. But these well-being indices, this can't be done. Though if you will open OECD, you would be able to compare amongst the countries as well. But usually we say that HDI, it's more sophisticated than the well-being indices. Well-being is more of a state of mind and it becomes difficult to measure at times. Okay, so this is more focusing on subjectivity and basic needs. This is more focusing on objective needs. So far so clear. These are the two differences on the basic needs and the well-being approach. Now there are two questions which IB has asked so far. One is that to whom would you give the weightage more? Is it basic needs or well-being? All right, number one thing. Number two thing is that do you think that development is challenging well-being? The more you are developing, the more you are growing economically in your country, do you think that you are harming well-being indices more? Think over it. Take a pause before jumping on the next slide. Just think that what could be the probable answer to this one. What do you think? To whom do you give the more weightage? Is it basic needs or well-being? Okay, apply all the perspectives when you are thinking about this one. Think whether you are in a developing country or underdeveloped country, or you are in developed country. Your response is coming from which state of mind? Okay, think over that and then write some of the points what you can think of it. You can pause and write down all the points. Okay, so these are the two questions which IB has asked. Think over it, and in one of my classes I would be discussing about the outline of these questions, though I have written down the outline over here as well, and the same outline which I have discussed with you in my previous slide. I move further. Now this is the last topic of the recording: economic growth or economic development. Can you give a pause and think what could be economic growth and what could be economic development? So economic growth, which talks about increase in monetary terms, okay, increase, that is monetary value of all the goods and services produced in the economy during a time, okay, during a time period. So that means that overall it is calculating those aggregate things which are based on the goods and the services. So GDP is there, GNP, it's there. This is the quantitative measures which is talking about. So this is about the economic growth. What could be economic development? Economic development, which is talking more about well-being, right? Well-being thing, which includes academic, health, employment, many more indicators are coming for that one. And this is more talking about the improved production volume due to the advancement of the technology, right? So growth, which is more quantitative in terms of development, and development, economic development itself, it's more qualitative. Human development is part of economic development. This is the difference between economic growth and economic development. Monetary growth, and here you see quality of life in a nation, which includes economic growth. Span, so in the span, this is the narrower concept and this is the broader concept. In the terms of scope, definitely you will consider this one as the unidimensional and economic development as the multidimensional approach. In terms of term, this is the short-term process and this is the long-term process, right? When the government is laying down any policy. So for economic growth, it is calculating on the basis of annual plan. It could be 5-year plan, it could be 4 years plan also. But in terms of economic development, it's a long-term process what the government is looking forward. Measurement, qualitative versus quantitative. Though economic development include quantitative also. Applicable to developed economies, and this one is applicable to developing economies. Government support. It is an automatic process that may or may not require intervention from the government side, right? Because this is what we are talking in terms of the capitalist, right? Capitalism. So their government may intervene, may not intervene over here. But here government's intervention is required because this is economic development. This is for human development. Government needs to introduce some policies to introduce this one. Kind of changes expected. So qualitative changes are expected. Quantitative changes are expected over here, and here qualitative changes are expected along with quantitative change. Examples: GDP, GNP, and here HDI. It could be even your OECD. It could be Happy Planet Index as well. So these are the few examples of global of economic growth and economic development. So, all right, so this is about the contested meaning of development. Number 1 point, the difference between basic needs and well-being. And number 3 point, the difference between economic growth and economic development. Now, something where you can think at least one example where you see countries moving from economic growth to economic development. When I say countries moving from economic growth to economic development, countries are not giving up economic growth altogether. They are keeping economic growth as well as economic development. So think of group of countries or a country where it has moved from economic growth to economic development, or where economic growth or economic development both going hand in hand. This is number one question to think of. Number two is, what do you think about the basic needs and well-being? Should basic needs be replaced by well-being or not? All right. I hope this video was informative for you. In case if you have any comment, please write it down. Stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.